I'm Kyle Racky, and I'm here with Joe Malcoun. He is an early-stage tech investor and the CEO of Nutshell, which is a CRM for growing businesses. As an investor, Joe has built a portfolio of over 20 early to mid-stage companies. He's worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs as an investor, a mentor, and a friend. And he's in Michigan, where he's helping the local tech scene grow, including co-founding Cahoots, a 25,000 square foot, well-appointed collaborative workspace in Ann Arbor. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Kyle, nice to meet you, man. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. You've got a wealth of experience that you bring to the table, and that I think you can share with our listeners and people viewing this. So, a lot of places to start with. It's kind of an interesting story. You know, a lot of times people run SaaS companies or startups. They're the one who founded it. They're the co-founder or the founder. You've got kind of a bit of a different story. Can you just let people know how you joined Nutshell as the CEO?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. It's a little bit different, like you said. So Nutshell's been around for about 7 years, but I was hired about 3 years ago or so. And for the early part of the history of the company, it was sort of a side project of the founders. The founders had sold their first company to Barracuda Networks, and they were building that into a huge business unit for Barracuda. They built it into a $100 million a year backup storage business, but they really wanted to build a CRM product that they felt was better than anything else out there. So they started Nutshell, and they put together a product team, and the product team just kind of ran with it for several years, making some really smart product decisions. But there was no marketing team, there was no leadership. It was really a product team just making some really good decisions. As a result, the company grew organically until the point where the team was kind of like, well, maybe we should do something with this. And I had met the investors just kind of around my local investing activities. And my initial interest in the company was actually to be an investor. But through that process, the board asked me to step in and actually take my first real operating role as the CEO here. And it's been an absolutely incredible experience.
That's really cool. And maybe tell people a little bit more about Nutshell in terms of, what kind of CRM is it? Who's sort of your core customer?
Sure. So Nutshell, we like to say Nutshell is a CRM system for teams that really believe in collaboration, teams that believe in growing, teams that like modern and design-centric products. One of the key tenets of our product is its UI and UX, and we believe that that's actually as important of a feature as anything else in the product. It's as critical as being able to sync your email. And the reason we believe that is because if people are going to spend a lot of time in this product, then they should enjoy it. And also, we're just seeing the people's expectations from very rich mobile app experiences is setting a completely different bar. So Nutshell tends to caters to companies. We have a number of different industries. Generally speaking, they're B2B companies. Generally speaking, they have a managed sales team, but they also typically have another team that serves the customer, like a support team, for example, or an engineering team. And that's important because a lot of the features in Nutshell allow for a level of collaboration that happens when all of those teams kind of come together to support the customer.
That's awesome. And I've tried Nutshell. I can speak firsthand that it is a beautiful product, really well designed. I couldn't agree more with you. That's something that's very a big part of what I believe is user experience. It's not a nice to have. It can actually be one of the things or the thing that grows your business. And people sometimes don't spend enough time thinking about that, or they just think, just do it ugly for now, and we'll worry about how it looks and feels later on.
Well, Kyle, you and I are in fairly competitive sectors, right? And when that's the case, I don't believe that MVP will ever do it. You kind of got to bring it, right?
Yeah.
Because people already have expectations.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, this goes in line with I know one of the things that you wanted to talk about, and I want to talk about as well, is about UI and about not forcing people into your UI. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we've been digging into this concept for a while that, for a lot of products like ours, there's always this struggle of How much functionality should we build directly in the product? And that really leads to a question of like, well, how much time do we expect people to spend in our product as opposed to other places where they're productive? And when we started really picking that apart and talking to our customers and talking to people who are sort of the power users of Nutshell, we realized that it's not always preferable to force them into our UI. And so, especially with like a lot of the capabilities, today, like so, Nutshell, for example, the one I'm really excited about, we just released our add-in for Outlook for Office 365 Outlook. And so now, basically, what we're doing is, salespeople already live in their email most of the day. So now there's a window, a side pane that pops up whenever you click an email, and it looks for that person in Nutshell, and it brings all of the critical information that's sitting in your CRM right to you in that place. And then it allows you to actually do the things you need to do right there, as opposed to switching back and forth and clicking through screens and things like that. So one thing we're trying to do a lot more is just like, how do you bring the most critical information to the person and meet them where they're already most productive?
I think when you're designing anything, you always want to make something simple. Everybody knows simple, right?
Yeah.
But to make something simple is usually very difficult.
Yeah.
And a lot of times engineers and developers, they want to code something in a way that's easy for them to code. They don't have to work too hard for it. And so I almost think there's some kind of relationship, I'm not sure what it is though, where in order to make something extremely simple for the user, you need to make it complicated in the back end for that to work.
Yeah, so I also, it's funny you use the word simple. It's a word that we struggle with, because the other thing that is difficult about simple is it sometimes implies not powerful.
Yes.
Or right, like sometimes it implies like simple as in like just barely meeting the so that's a whole nother challenge, is just like how do you make something powerful in the background, and also simple to use, and be able to convey that power. I'd actually though say, and I think this might be unique, we happen to have a group of engineers who often don't take the short path, and I wish they did. So I think we actually have a group, and there's DNA in it. Again, if you go back to the founding of the company, it was entirely an engineering company for like 4.5 years. And so we have this group of folks who the most senior guys are like craftsmen. And like they love that. They love the taking the back, focusing on the back end and putting in the grueling sort of effort to like make it really, really great. But the trade-off is like time to market.
Yeah. That's always a difficult thing, and I think it's where good product management comes into play.
Yeah, right.
Because you want your engineers to build things in a way that's very stable and future-proof. But yeah, there is that tendency to overthink things and go, I want to engineer the most beautiful solution that will work under any possible condition. And you're like, can we just get it done? Let's just push that.
Yeah, the edge cases we'll deal with later. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I think I've actually long said this, and it's funny that we share that philosophy, that simplicity and I guess sophistication or power are on inverse levels of the spectrum. And so in order to make something very simple, you inherently need to take away some of the power, the flexibility, the ability to customize. And so I think it's a lot of product decisions that are about balance. There are certain aspects where you go, you know what, let's just go simple so that it's not complicated for people. But then there's other ways where you go, our customers want complicated, or at least they want the power to do what they want. Yeah,
they want the power, right? And so that's where really I think like it is that in my mind is like the biggest challenge we rise to from a product perspective is being able to say, okay, we heard you and we want to deliver that power, but we've got to figure out a way to do it in a way that's approachable. And so a really good example for us is Nutshell's always had an extremely powerful sales process engine in the product. And that goes way back to the founding where, again, the founders of the company, their first company, they had this very pretty sophisticated sales process. They were selling boxes. And they had to like ship the box, and they had to have someone plug the box in, and they had to test the box. And there's all these steps, right? And so Nutshell was built on this premise that CRM is way more than just like things in buckets or contacts, right? It's actually about the incremental things you have to do within a bucket, right? Or a stage of a sales process. And so anyhow, we built this really robust engine that I swear to God, quite frankly, it is the most powerful. It's more powerful than Salesforce. The problem is it's extremely complicated to set up right now. And so one of our main initiatives right now is like we've realized like we've got to free this thing to the world. We've got to like bring it to the world and bring everybody the power of a sales process. But we've got to redesign the way in which we get people on the sales process.
I take issue with any idea that you could build a more complicated, clunky CRM than Salesforce.
It's not more complicated. Yeah, we have a good relationship with Salesforce. They're, without them, I'm not sure any of us really would have anything else to complain about.
All right. But I won't make you say anything too damning then. But
we honestly have a great relationship with them. We actually talked acquisition with them before. There's a number of ways in which we could be great partners with them. We're never like going to go eat Salesforce's lunch. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of market out there for us to go tap into. But yeah.
Does that ever? CRM, I know we're both in fairly competitive markets, but I would say mine less so. The proposal software space is fairly new.
I agree.
CRM, I would put up there with like help desk software as being
maybe more.
Very, big market, but a lot of competition. How do you guys think about that and deal with that? Does that ever make you worry, or do you just go like, hey, this is our niche, this is what we do, we're not worried about it?
Both. There are days where we're like, what the hell? Like, that's 15 more CRMs we heard about this week. It's a little bit of a game at the company now. But here's the thing. Like you said, it's a huge market. It's kind of like one of those markets where it's like literally like, are you a business? Okay, you need CRM, right? Like it's not there's not a lot of qualification as to who actually could benefit from a CRM. Do you have customers? You need CRM, right? Now, then, the question then does get down to, but what do you need? And so the important thing really is for all of us to continue to focus on specific areas where we think that we can serve our customers the best. The truth is there's hundreds of them, but there's really, at the end of the day, maybe 10 in my peer group that we really ever come across and we talk about, or we get, go head to head with, or, we see any real competition with. And so honestly, when it gets to that point, and I think about my ability to succeed, I'm going to focus on our ability to build insanely good product. We know the ways in which we want to differentiate. It's very difficult to pack that into a message in our industry. Everybody wants to say the same thing. Easy to use, a CRM you actually love. There's just a variation of that. Every single one of us will have some variation of that. So the real point is, how do you back it up in your product, right? And then the other thing I think that's interesting, we were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started recording, is what is your capital strategy? Because I can tell you right now, I look at some of our competitors and their capital strategy, and I think, I have no idea how you're supposed to exit that. I have no idea how you're supposed to deliver a return on that.
You can tell you've been an early stage investor.
Yeah, well, you have to really think about this stuff. Like, at the end of the day, the interesting thing about CRM is it's so tangential to like every other product category that I could imagine almost anyone acquiring a CRM company, right? Whether you're, like you said, help desk. Help desk software, help desk companies, acquire a CRM, fully integrate them, sell them as a package, blah, blah. Even like companies like GoDaddy, they're starting to sell services in addition to like hosting and things like that. So anyone who touches these small businesses might want a CRM, and as a result, I just don't think anyone's going to grow up to be like a $20 billion company.
Yeah, there is
They'll
a
get
sales
taken
force.
out.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, I won't say their name, but a competing company who basically brags that they're the most funded CRM in the world, right?
It was an interesting comment that they sort of were quoted on, and I totally understand where they're coming from, and I applaud them for their success in raising, especially from really great investors. I just sometimes wonder what the value is in perpetuating the concept that more money is a good thing.
Yeah, especially when I think having less money makes you focus on what's really important now and not overbuilding a product. I think there's a huge tendency for well-funded, especially venture-backed startups to overbuild their products. And because they're getting pressure from their venture capitalists that, okay, you need to really expand, you really need to attack every market in the game. And whatever was special about that startup in the beginning now becomes not special anymore. And money can do that.
Well, I mean, I sometimes catch myself feeling like a conspiracy theorist here, but like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at the actual industry, right, you have more money from LPs flowing into funds than you've ever seen. Funds are getting bigger, and the only way to deploy that capital is efficiently is through larger checks. And they'll do that at the expense of higher valuations in order to like just get that money out there. And so there's just all this money available for companies. And actually, the first time we went to the market, when I first joined the company, we were offered a $5 million Series A, and we were like, whoa, like great investor, $5 million bucks, that's a bunch of money. And we were like, we stopped and thought about it. We're like, I don't even know what we'd do with $5 million right now. Like, I literally had no idea. I couldn't even come up with a plan that I had any level of like belief in. So we said no. We're like, no. And I think it was one of the smartest things we ever did. Instead we put $1 million round together internally, and that was the round we rolled with.
Yeah, I admire that. It's amazing how similar our philosophies align. We did the same thing. It was a much smaller check size, but got a term sheet from a VC, and we just said, we really don't know how we're going to use this money because we're not going to do anything different than we already have job ads out. We're already hiring people. We're not going to hire 10 more just because we have a check, So that's interesting. Now where we're at as a company, and this leads into a conversation about sales. So we're interested now in raising a round of investment because we've actually got a pretty good idea of our sales process and the roles we need to fill and some of the stuff around automation. So I'd really love to hear from your standpoint as an expert in sales, how people start building sales teams and building sales processes that enable them to do things like take a $5 million check and start actually using it to really scale.
So I'm going to be super transparent. I'm not going to pretend to know how to build a sales team because it's actually not something we've done yet at Nutshell. Sales for most of the history of the company has been entirely self-serve. We've recently started to experiment with a sales team, and it's fascinating, and we're learning a lot, and we do believe that we're going to continue to invest there and grow. But one thing I really do like to talk about is sales processes, and again, mostly because that really is, I think, Nutshell's core strength is the sophistication of our sales process underneath the hood of the product and what it allows companies to do. And, one thing I always say is, like, first of all, everyone's got a sales process, whether you know it or not. Like, if you have customers, you've got a process. It might not be a very good one or a very efficient one, but you got something there. And then chances are you've got some people who sell really well and some who don't. And that person who sells well is probably doing things slightly differently than what the other person's doing, right? The other thing I'll mention is, like, generally speaking, most sales processes are actually quite similar. We like to all say that we have a magic thing. We really don't when you start to look at them. And we've studied thousands and thousands of sales processes from our customers, right? And effectively what we find is, like, the differences are really about jargon and actually scope. Like, how do you break up a certain stage? Is it one stage or three? But at the end of the day, the thing that we believe in is it's better to have something than nothing. So start simple. Write down a simple sales process, talk to your team, understand what they're already doing, and ask them what's working and not working. So start from there. And second, once you've laid it out in this very sort of high level stage perspective, the thing that we really tell people to focus on now is how do things move from one stage to the other. And that is where I think a lot of people miss the opportunity. And frankly, a lot of products don't quite support sales teams. It's one thing to measure the volume of a pipeline, right? And that's like, well, how much I heard I could swear on this
Oh,
podcast.
absolutely.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's one thing to know how much shit is in your pipeline, the
Yeah.
volume, but what about the velocity? How fast does that stuff move through the pipeline? That's way
Absolutely.
more important.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you can only measure that if you have more nuance within each stage. And what I mean by that is, what are the specific steps that take you from qualifying to nurturing, right? What are the specific steps that your best people are doing? Get those in your sales process and make sure that you require the things that need to be required. You make certain things skippable if you think they can be skippable. And by the way, you should be measuring all of that. So if you find out that, hey, it turns out that like 90% of the time we win a lead, we skip this one step. You should know that so your team stops doing it in general.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can't do that though if your sales process doesn't go beyond just sort of this big picture stage level.
Yeah, and it's sometimes more complicated than you think when you start talking to your actual sales reps. Because a lot of times, like guys like you and me are working out sales funnels and processes, but we're not the ones on the phone every day.
Right. Yeah.
And I talked to one of our sales reps, Amy, the other week because it's a big part of what I'm doing is trying to establish that. And so I'm like, okay, so you demo, you do the demo, and then you follow up with a couple emails or calls, and then you close, right? And then she's like, well, sometimes there's, they want a second phone call to bring in their IT director, and they have got security questions, and then you've got to look at it. And so I'm like, okay, sometimes the process is a little more complicated than you'd like to think.
So we call those overlay processes, and it's a term, right? And actually, it's something that we allow for in the product, and it's actually been like a big topic of conversation right now as we start to rethink how we're redesigning that whole part of the product. But like these ideas that at some point in a funnel, in a pipeline, some new information might be presented that actually changes the steps you need to close the deal. And sometimes it can be automated or it can be a binary thing like, oh no, this is now $1 million deal. Well, for $1 million deals, we do these 5 things as opposed to these 3 things, right? But the way you described it, right, was that she came up against some new participants in the conversation or new information required. And though it might be as simple as like just delivering one new piece of information or answering a question, it's actually changing your process.
Yeah.
And what will happen is over time, you'll probably find that some of those are patterns and that, it's not unusual to then have to answer the security question. So if you have an overlay for just the security question comes up, it's a simple thing. And you can start to measure it. You can actually start to measure, hey, by the way, guys, now 85% of the time we're getting this question. So let's just make that another step, even if they don't ask about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or maybe get the, try to get the IT director in an earlier call if possible, or do stuff like that.
Yes. Or don't even qualify the deal until you have, because you've learned that you never sell until you have that conversation.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So yeah, like you got to be able to do the incremental stuff. You got to be able to measure that stuff. Otherwise, all you know is, okay, this week we have more leads in qualifying than we did the week before.
I think a big challenge people run into is salespeople are a certain type of breed. A lot of them, I shouldn't say all, but a lot don't like to put information in stuff like CRMs.
Yeah,
so,
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I don't like to do it.
When you're trying to find out some of these metrics, like how many emails, how many follow-ups, how long does it take to close a deal, it's a lot of work as the owner or the director of sales or whoever to figure out what kind of reports should you be generating, what kind of metrics should you be looking at.
Well, first of all, like our belief is salespeople shouldn't have to do any of that. Okay. Now that's not yet our reality, but we're getting really damn close. Here's the problem. What happens is I have this CRM, and the person looking for it is a vice president of sales. Okay, because that person needs to track certain metrics that have been delivered to them from senior leadership, right? And so they're going to get a product, and they're going to tell their team, you got to use this product because I need to report out and stuff. And they're sold on that product because it's like, hey, look at this sweet report we're going to give you, and this funky report, and this cool report. The problem is we've basically created this industry where the value proposition being delivered to the buyer is entirely dependent on the actions and use of a completely other group of people. right? So I can't tell you here's the value and then you just go make it happen for yourself. You have to depend on your team. So for us, we have to make that as easy as possible. We have to like automate as much of that as possible. So that's what you saw with like phase one of this stuff is like, look, if you have a CRM that doesn't automatically ingest all your email, that's table stakes, right? You have to have that, right? That's just like, right? The next step is going to be automating all of these little processes in the background. And like our goal is to make Nutshell this little engine that's always running in the background. It's always primed, it's always going, and you're just doing your work. And your work should be communicating with prospects and customers, building a relationship with them, not entering data, not clicking buttons, none of that. So if we can build our products, if you just do what you would normally do, and then Nutshell does stuff in the background automatically, that's our nirvana.
I love it. Especially where where I'm starting to kind of put our sales team together is customer success is a component of the product of the sales team, right? Totally. Customer 100%. Success it's not just about offering customer support. It's about how do you keep clients from churning and how do you intelligently and appropriately upsell and cross-sell at various stages of their life cycle. And I think it's the worst thing in the world a customer success rep should be doing is pouring through data and trying to figure out who to follow up with. Yeah. There should be something feeding them a list of people to say, here's your 10 calls to make this morning,
Yeah. And this feeds into, another topic that I mentioned earlier that I want to chat with you about, which is like this idea that CRM is only for your sales team. And it's bullshit. It's not how Nutshell works. Every single person in my company is on our CRM, and not because like we're dog fooding it, because it's the way we need to operate. Like I need to know which engineer worked on a bug for this customer. My sales team needs to know what the outstanding issues are with a support rep before they go and upsell a customer. They need to know that, right? And vice versa. So the idea is that if we believe, and people say this all the time, like everybody in the company is here to support the customer or serve the customer. If that's true, then everybody should, one, have access to that information, and two, be able to like contribute that information. So customer information is totally distributed through a company. It happens all the time. And right now, unfortunately, the way we price our products, we penalize our customers for putting everyone on it. We sell it per seat. And I just don't think that's right. What ends up happening is you get engineering login, right? So it's like engineering, right, at whatever.com. And the problem is that 5 people use that login and you don't actually know who did what. It happens all the time. So we're deep studying how do we have an all-in pricing model that one encourages everybody in the company to be on the product. So we know it's going to be better for you. And if it's better for you, it's going to be better for us because it's lower churn. But also find a way in which we can also participate in the upside of growth, because that's really important to companies like ours.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, as a SaaS company, one of those metrics you look at is ARPA, average revenue per account, and how that's growing. Yeah. But okay, so we've been through this before with Proposify. We actually used to, at one point we priced, I think it was $15 or $18 per user per month, just because we were starting out and that's how people seem to price things. Which really, when you think about it, is kind of a relic of when software used to be delivered on CDs. And, if you had like per seat pricing, you had to install it on like 3 machines, so you would pay for each one. It's crazy that that's continued. I find especially in the CRM and help desk space that per user model proliferates, right? Yeah. So we used to do that, and then we started to go, okay, well, actually, the way our customers tend to value the product isn't so much how many team members are in it, it's how many proposals do they write a month. That's sort of the metric for success. If you only write 1 proposal a month, the product isn't as valuable as somebody who writes 1,000. So we started to create tiers based on that, and then for some reason, we still had it in our head that, okay, but you still got to limit how many people can get into this thing. Like if you're on the small pricing tier, only 1. If you're on 2, maybe 5. But then we had people going, well, I have more proposals, but I don't need that many teammates, or I have more teammates and less proposals. And then one day we just said, fuck it. Unlimited users everywhere on every plan. And that was kind of a gamble, and it actually worked out really well. Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear. It's so, it's kind of like,
it's very attractive to limit it by customers, right? By seats. But you're really kind of, all you're doing now is actually pricing it, but in buckets.
Yeah.
You're selling like quantity, still, but you're selling it in sort of larger quantities. So I totally agree with you. We haven't figured it out yet. We have some ideas. I think that there's one company out there that does it particularly well that we're looking closely at. But
Are you allowed to say who they are?
No, I don't want to yet,
Okay.
because like it'd be too much of a tip off as to like what we're gonna potentially do.
Sure.
And I'm not worried about sharing it more than like I just don't want to. I don't want to put my team in a position where we can't deliver on something, because it's still early, and like I'm talking to tons of customers right now about it, and generally speaking, people are excited. But at the end of the day, again, like you have to be able. You're totally right, and like I love this idea of like how do you price based on value. I think we're actually challenged by that. Is it like, well, do we charge you per lead you create? Maybe, but some people create like one $50 million lead a year, and someone else creates $100,000 $500 leads a year, and
It's a difficult balance, because you want to, in an ideal world, you'd say the more value you deliver your customer, the more money they pay,
I agree.
right?
Yeah.
Analytics products do this all the time. The more users in your product, or the more MRR you're doing, the more you pay for it. The challenge comes with, like, somebody could say to us, okay, so why don't you guys only charge people when they win a deal through your product, or when the deal size is really big? And then that starts to cut into okay, well, now we're going to have a lot of people who aren't paying and saying, well, I didn't win a proposal, so I'm not going to, there's a balance.
One way or another. Yeah.
There's a balance.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear on that. One thing that I'm curious about: do you guys qualify or charge or limit storage?
No.
I don't get that. Storage is like basically free.
Yeah.
Yet companies are still charging people or limiting them on storage. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like that's a total scam. Like, storage is so cheap. Like, I get it. Like 5 years ago, maybe I get that. But it's like we've always kind of held this thing of like the incremental cost of storing someone's data on our servers is so minute. Like, absolutely. That to suggest that we're going to limit that, I don't know. I just don't think it's realistic.
I agree completely. There's I don't even think Basecamp does it anymore, but I remember at one point Basecamp had a file limit. I think they've gotten rid of that.
Yeah.
I think some of our competitors have a file storage limit, and that's really just people uploading their images or their PDFs or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. If that's not what somebody's buying, it's kind of like service businesses selling people based on time.
Yeah.
Right? Which is kind of an outdated model, like the lawyer model.
Right.
It's like what value?
It's the wrong incentives too, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. Joe, I don't want to, take up too much of your time. This has been a really fun chat. I know we covered a lot of different things. I'd love to do it again and delve more into this stuff if you're up to it one time. And your beard game is strong. I
work it. Yeah. Well, I'm committed now. It's like I don't think I can shave it. It's like become like this icon.
Well, you said you sounded like a conspiracy theorist a minute ago. So the beard lends itself to that. Little Nostradamus.
University of Michigan. So,
if people want to check out your awesome product, Nutshell, nutshell.com.
That's correct.
And if they want to hear more from you, they want to, chat with you on social or get more of your blog posts, where can they go?
Yep. You can find me at jmalcoun, JMALCOUN. And please hit me up. Love to talk about this stuff. It's like we love to nerd out about it.
I do as well. It's been a fun chat. People check out Joe. We will have links in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Cool.